Some people living on Ankeny's north side aren't happy after learning Walmart wants to build in their backyard. Local 5's Alex Fulton shares the concerns coming from neighbors and what will happen next.
It's not the right place for it, to be really honest with you.
Mark Havman and his wife Wendy have lived in Ankeny's Autumn Ridge neighborhood for almost a decade.
You're going to take away a lot of the peace and quiet that's in the neighborhood these days.
Walmart is considering building its second Ankeny location near the intersection of 36th and North Ankeny Boulevard. That's just 3 blocks from the Ankeny couple's townhome. The city of Ankeny asked the property owners to conduct a traffic impact study before reviewing their request to rezone the land for commercial use.
On our street, for example, there's only one way in and one way out. So if people start passing through here all the time, it's going to get to be a real mess.
The Havmans also worry how traffic may impact the children who walk to nearby elementary schools.
One of my biggest concerns is the safety of the children in the area. Because of the 2 elementary schools, it's obvious that there are a lot of small children.
A couple of weeks ago, Walmart held a town hall inviting neighbors to speak about the proposed development. In response to concerns, the company told Local 5 in a statement, quote, "We're thankful for the opportunity to meet with neighbors. We learned a lot and are taking their feedback into consideration." The Havmans hope Walmart considers looking elsewhere for its second Ankeny store.
Putting it in the middle of a residential area where people have lived 5-10 years just doesn't make sense, especially when there's land out by the Costco to the east.
If and when the city of Ankeny receives the traffic impact study, there will be a public hearing at a future Plan and Zoning Commission meeting and a future City Council meeting. In Ankeny, Alex Fulton, Local 5 News.
The last day of the Iowa legislative session is scheduled for Friday. However, if the state budget isn't finalized, lawmakers will have to work into next week without getting paid. Our Connor O'Neill tells us what needs to happen in the next 4 days to avoid that.
By the end of April, we start to see bills moving a little quicker than earlier in the years through the State House. One is because lawmakers don't want to have to work without getting paid, but also the state needs to figure out how much money they'll have for the next fiscal year. On Monday, the Iowa Senate announced it came to a budget compromise with Governor Reynolds. For the next fiscal year, the state would have $9.4 billion in its budget. Most of that money would be allocated to Medicaid programs and funding school districts. Senate Republicans said at least $1 billion would be allocated toward education. Republicans called the agreement responsible by putting taxpayers first. Moving forward, the Senate still needs to work with the House to make sure it's on the same page with its proposed budget. One of the main components the Iowa legislature wants to finish is its reform to the state property tax system. Republican leaders told us in the past couple weeks they don't want to rush property tax bills, but instead they want it done right. That includes a proposal to get rid of Iowa's rollback system, which limits property tax increases. Another vital part of finishing the legislative session is finalizing school funding. Earlier this month, the state legislature decided to increase school funding by 2% per student for the next academic year. Now school districts await the governor to sign that bill into law. Reporting from the state capitol, Connor O'Neill, Local 5 News.
Tonight, we are learning new details about the investigation into the disappearance of Jody Huisentruit, who went missing in 1995. A Cerro Gordo County judge unsealed part of a search warrant for a person of interest in the case. Local 5's Alex Fulton is here to break down the latest developments and then what could come next. Alex.
Well, Stephanie, a search warrant from 2017 directed authorities to install a tracking device on 2 cars owned by John Van Zyce. His car was tracked from March 2nd to March 5th of that year. Jody Huisentruit was a news anchor at KIMT, the CBS affiliate in Mason City. Evidence found at her apartment, her last known location, suggests she may have been abducted. The unsealed search warrant shows that Van Zyce traveled from Baxter, Iowa, to his new home in Phoenix during the period he was tracked. He made stops at several different locations, parking at some places for up to 18 hours on his cross-country trip. Now, private investigator Steve Ridge told Local 5 in a statement he believes a grand jury will need to be assembled soon. He went on to say, quote, "I have identified a minimum of 9 people so far that need to be questioned under oath. Most people will know a great deal about what happened to Jody." Ridge was the only person to ever interview Van Zyce, who maintained his innocence until he died last December. Stephanie.
Well, all new tonight, the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship is committing $250,000 to what will be called Legacy Woods. It's a historical haven in West Des Moines that will transform the land surrounding one of Central Iowa's oldest homes. Local 5's Megan McPherson shows us what the plans entail and how the city is adding in elements to improve water quality.
This 28-acre farmstead that was once home to famed farmer and abolitionist James Jordan will soon become a campus full of West Des Moines history.
We really are proud to be here in West Des Moines as you launch this new project here that is so exciting.
Iowa Secretary of Agriculture Mike Naig joined the city of West Des Moines and other local organizations at the site Monday, announcing 14 urban conservation projects across the state. At the Legacy Woods site, it's out with the old and in with the new. What was once a church camp will be the home of an arboretum filled with hundreds of trees, some just planted.
They're healthy, look at that. Yeah. It's ready to...
And others that have been around for 2 centuries. A large part of the project is focused on water quality. Crews are working on a system that will drain water from the property into Jordan Creek and the Raccoon River.
These proven water quality practices are the beginning phases of a larger master plan that includes accessible trails and recreation, features a playground, a new heritage center adjacent to the Jordan House Museum.
Other plans for the site include a plaza and pergola for outdoor gatherings and a new heritage center to showcase the Underground Railroad exhibit, currently in the Jordan House basement.
And while all this construction is going on, you can still come visit the iconic Jordan House, which was built back in the 1850s when it's open for public tours on Fridays and Saturdays. In West Des Moines, Megan McPherson, Local 5 News.
Iowa Republicans want to make reporting bullying in schools easier with its proposed legislation. However, Democrats argue that the Republicans' bill is exclusive. Our Connor O'Neill shares both sides' arguments and what changes are coming to schools.
On Tuesday, the Senate debated its bill that adjusts the definition of school bullying in Iowa. Senate Republicans' bill changes the language of current state law and removes a list of traits that a bully might target to create a hostile school environment, including a student's race, sexual orientation, religion, and disability status.
Therefore, those schools don't believe they are required to act unless the behavior is based on one of the traits listed.
Those in favor argued this bill will make sure all students are seen and everyone gets an equal level of protection. They add this legislation may make it easier for bullying to be reported.
This just broadens the range. So bullying is bullying. I mean, the simple thing is before the law asked who you were, and now it asks what was done to you.
However, opponents of the bill said it could make it easier to bully kids.
The research tells us what's going to happen, right? Incidences of bullying are ultimately going to go up and enforcement actions are going to go down, unfortunately.
Democrats argued that the state's current law provides teachers with a reference to determine whether a student is bullied.
It is a life and death matter, and what this legislation does is it throws out guidance. It makes it harder for families to bring forth cases of bullying and get responses.
The House already previously passed the bill, so with the Senate advancing it on Tuesday, and now it heads to the governor's desk where it awaits her signature moving forward. Reporting from the state capitol, Connor O'Neill, Local 5 News.
Drake University students are putting what they learn in the classroom into action by coaching the St. Anthony Middle School track team. Both the athletes and student coaches are learning some valuable lessons from this unique collaboration.
Your first station. Fun, good.
They say one of the best ways to learn how to do something is to just go out and do it. That's what students in Drake's Leadership Education and Development, or LEAD program, are doing this semester.
St. Anthony needed a dedicated coach for the track team, and my project-based learning class needed a project where my college kids can design and implement tasks and process and accomplish outcomes. So it just kind of worked out. The timing of the season worked out really well for us.
This collaboration has helped everyone involved step outside of their comfort zone. For many of the St. Anthony athletes, this is their first time participating in organized sports. And for many of the Drake students, this is their first time coaching.
It's so cool that we get to be leaders and foster that. That is very much what this class is for us, like learning how to lead in an environment where we've never been before. So I think just having the turnout that we did, it is such a cool experience.
This year, the track team has more than doubled in size. And it's a testament to the dedication of the Drake student coaches.
They're really awesome. When you're not feeling the best, they can help you out and they get you through it really well.
Among the many lessons that have been learned through this collaboration is that leadership can come from anywhere.
It can come from a 5th grader, it can come from an 8th grader, it can come from a coach that's never played a sport before. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned, that leadership comes in every way, shape, or form, and it's really cool when you get a group of leaders that are all different.
The city of Ames now has a vision to tackle homelessness. At a town hall yesterday, the city unveiled the findings of a new study involving months of research. Local 5's Alex Fulton listened in on the presentation and went through the report. Alex.
Stephanie, the city directed consulting company Analytic Insight to conduct this study after seeing a rise of homeless people last summer. It's clear the community cares about this, as over 100 people attended yesterday's presentation, asking questions for about an hour. The 51-page study recommends more case management services, expanding shelter capacity, as well as a partnership with Iowa Works to host more job fairs. Another priority is continuing to support service provider partnerships like the one with the Arch, which works to assess the homeless population's needs. The study also suggests building a peer navigator program. This would essentially be a team working with those who are reluctant to use homelessness services. Those 5 recommendations coming from consultant Amy Flowers are only for fiscal year 2025-2026.
There are people in the community, in the Story County community, who don't make use of the services for whatever reason that might be. They might be distrustful, they might be anxious.
The next fiscal year, the study suggests identifying somewhere in the city to escape the heat or cold and creating an emergency housing fund. This would be for situations where someone might need financial assistance to pay rent, say if an unexpected hospital bill comes up. It also recommends creating a homelessness task force to assess needs and develop policy recommendations. Some people say they would like to see it sooner rather than later.
The task force being delayed, to me, is morally abhorrent. Like, we need to get solutions as soon as possible. Like, I'm sorry, that's not workable.
The following fiscal year, 2027-2028, only has one recommendation. That's to plan and build more mixed-use, supportive, and affordable housing. However, some argue more options are needed now.
I would like to see some more consideration given to what can be added that would occur in the next, 6 to 12 months by working with private landlords.
Now, at one point, the consultant was asked how these initiatives would be funded given recent federal funding cuts. She responded that the city will likely have to turn to private partnerships and state funding. Stephanie?
Going forward, Iowa schools will be rolling out plenty of changes when students can use their cell phones, if at all, during school. At the state capitol today, Governor Reynolds formally signed a bill that restricts cell phone use in Iowa classrooms. The school districts, charter schools, and innovation zone schools must now adopt policies to restrict the use of phones and other personal devices. Several districts, like Ottumwa, already have a policy in place and say the results have been profound.
Ottumwa schools this year experienced firsthand how powerful a bell-to-bell cell phone policy can be in a district. The results, as the governor was alluding to, far exceeded our expectations.
Schools must set individual policies by July 1st. They will take effect next school year. We told you last year that State Auditor Rob Sand discovered the Iowa Judicial Branch misallocated over $27 million. Today, the House Government Oversight Committee questioned Sand and his findings about why his office didn't come forward sooner. Our Connor O'Neill sat in on the hearing and has more.
Yes, Stephanie, well, the most important piece here is that no money actually left the government's hands that should not have. It was just placed in the wrong state funds. Now lawmakers want to know what needs to be fixed to avoid future allocation errors. Back in 2022, Auditor Rob Sand's office was made aware that state funds were being misallocated. Sand's office then conducted an audit that found the Iowa Judicial Branch improperly distributed $27.5 million in court debt funds due to coding errors over several years. Those errors, Sand said, happened after the state legislature passed bills in 2020 and 2021 that made changes to how court debt was distributed.
This is not a situation where there's fraud involved. This is not a situation where money has been misspent. The system changed. and the funds continued to flow, partially according to the old system, partially according to mistake, as they worked through very quickly their need to reassess and reorient the system.
These state funds were meant for highway maintenance, juvenile detention, and victim compensation. The errors resulted in state funds being underfunded. No money actually left the government's hands. It was just put into the wrong place. House Republicans criticized Auditor Sand on Wednesday for not taking action years before, since his office learned of the issues in late 2022. Lawmakers also asked for verifiable numbers of the coding errors, resulting in money going to the state general fund.
I'd like to know how much still went to the wrong place and who was responsible for it continuing to go to the wrong place.
We know that there were no dollars involved here that actually left the state's or the government's hands that should not have.
Even after the auditor's findings, Sand said he doesn't have legal authority to propose sanctions against someone for the errors. Now, the judicial branch has said it plans to introduce legislation next year that it says will address some of these errors.
Around 330 AmeriCorps volunteers in Iowa are now looking for opportunities elsewhere after their positions were suddenly cut. It's part of the Trump administration's efforts to reduce government spending. Local 5's Alex Fulton shares how one Iowa nonprofit is responding. Alex.
Well, Stephanie, right now, Rob Barron with Seed Coalition is really focused on offering support to the AmeriCorps members he had to let go. In some cases, this federal agency even helps people pay off their college tuition in exchange for their service.
Well, I'd say right now the vibe is distressed and worried, shocked.
Rob Barron got an email on Friday stating 2 federal grants worth $800,000 had been cut, effective immediately. He's with Seed Coalition, a nonprofit assisting in the civic development of college students.
The reasoning was that they no longer fit the federal government's priorities.
Through Seed Coalition, 74 AmeriCorps volunteers did service projects at Iowa and Minnesota colleges. This could be building a food pantry on campus or mentoring students at a greater risk of dropping out. All of the volunteers are now being let go.
At this point in time of the year, we were about 10 months into a 12-month grant. So we have some folks who were on the 5-yard line of completing their service when the rug was pulled out from under them.
In total, 15 programs in Iowa are now facing funding cuts. America's Service Commissions works with and trains AmeriCorps volunteers in all 50 states.
So every state's been impacted by this across the country. Over 30,000 AmeriCorps member positions across over 800 programs.
A federal lawsuit filed by 24 states is giving Barron hope that it's not necessarily the end of the road for his AmeriCorps volunteers.
We would certainly hope that the courts would rule in our favor and our members would be able to continue doing the service that they were approved to do in some cases 10 or 11 months ago.
Now, AmeriCorps is a very broad agency with volunteers assisting with everything from education to disaster response. Barron is encouraging people to contact their elected officials to voice their concerns about the cuts.
Many brave Iowans, of course, fought in Vietnam, willing to sacrifice their lives for our country.
And Local 5's Larissa Leone gives a deeper dive into the role they played in the war and how their history is being preserved.
Jerry Berry grew up in Des Moines. After graduating high school in 1963, he went on to study at Simpson College.
Was captain of the football team, had a great time down there.
After graduating from Simpson College, Barry was eligible for the draft. Shortly after receiving his diploma, he was told to pay a visit to the Marine Selection Officer.
He said I could be an officer because I graduated from college, take a test. I took a test. I walked out into his lobby and I saw this poster of a F-4 Phantom jet, a handsome Marine in front of it in an orange flight suit, and I asked him if I could do that.
Barry joined the Marines in '67 and was commissioned to a second lieutenant. He was eventually deployed to serve in the Vietnam War. Once a young man from Des Moines' West Side, was now a Marine fighting in the 1975 evacuation of Saigon, tasked to pick up the ambassador in the height of the Vietnam War.
Load me up with Vietnamese, but I'm very disturbed by this point. I don't see how this thing can possibly end. And so I told my crew chief to get all the passengers off.
That's when Barry decided to take matters into his own hands, a decision that changed the trajectory of the evacuation efforts.
Called the Marine security guard over again and said, go downstairs and tell the ambassador this aircraft, Lady A09, is not leaving the roof until he's on board. And then in my best aviator voice, I said, the president orders.
After Barry's call, the ambassador's whole entourage were on board his aircraft within minutes, marking a major achievement at the hands of an Iowan.
In my own mind, all the ambassador ever wanted was somebody to order him out, whether it be the president, Henry Kissinger, an admiral or something, but he was finally ordered out by that roguishly handsome Marine captain from Des Moines, Iowa. That's how I tell people I ended America's involvement in Vietnam.
Larissa Leone, Local 5 News.
The Granger City Council fired the chief of its Emergency Medical Services Department. The city made the move on Tuesday after deciding to combine its EMS and fire services. Now, the former chief is sharing what went down and the surprising thing that happened next.
During a hearing on Tuesday, the Granger City Council approved the termination of Emergency Medical Services Chief Jess Jewell. Jewell, who had been the chief for over a year, found out she would be able to appeal her termination 24 hours prior to Tuesday's hearing.
They wouldn't answer any of my questions. The council members just sat there in silence. It was a joke. It was a complete joke. It was a formality, and then it was over.
Jewell said she came in wanting answers why the city was firing her and still thought she could change the council members' minds.
Until the termination actually happened, I held out hope. And I think all the members of the department did as well. And I think that is why those resignations happened after the gavel dropped on my termination.
17 employees filed resignations in response to the city firing Jewell, including paramedic Jerry Brenneman.
It's not fair to the people who live there. I mean, that's the bottom line, is like they should be able to depend when they call 911 that, you know, one or two paramedics is going to show up and be able to do it, and now they can't. Or it's going to be a delay.
Now, the city told me it's growing quickly and ultimately wants to improve its emergency response time, and adds that it believes that the city council's move earlier this week will help do just that. Granger City Administrator said part of the reason the city dismissed Jewell was because it claimed she wasn't logging her hours, but Jewell said that's just not true. Moving forward, Jewell said she still feels confident the people in Granger will still get the care and response they need. It just may be from outside EMS departments. Reporting from Granger, Connor O'Neill, Local 5 News.
Granger's mayor says he's still committed to quality emergency services. Recently, the city invested over $350,000 for a new ambulance.
Drake's spring game just got underway here at Drake Stadium, and you may notice a familiar face on the Bulldogs sideline this fall, and that's former Hawkeye Joe Evans. Now, coaching wasn't necessarily on his radar before this, but considering he comes from a successful family of coaches, it was a natural fit.
Just a couple of years ago, Joe Evans was terrorizing quarterbacks and wreaking havoc in the backfield. Now he's coaching up the Drake defensive line to do the same.
I feel like I can relate to them because I really just got out of college a couple of years ago. So being able to relate to them in that way is pretty special.
Evans' resume as a player speaks for itself. He had a successful career at Iowa, where he went from a walk-on to being a key piece of one of the top defenses in the nation. He ranks in the top 5 for most sacks in program history, was an all Big Ten selection, and a team captain.
There's a respect factor there, and I do think some of it is because of what he did as a player, but also what he demands out here, and the way he coaches, the way he prepares himself for meetings, the way he recruits, all those things. I think these guys are all seeing that, and I think it's going to pay pretty big dividends for us having Joe on staff.
After a brief stint with the Baltimore Ravens, Evans was at a crossroads in his career and was trying to decide what his next step would be. Then, the opportunity to coach at Drake came along. The first-year coach has learned from some of the best coaches in the state, from his grandpa to the coaches he played for at Iowa, and now Joe Woodley.
My grandpa, he was a legendary coach over at Mount Pleasant. He actually had a team that was unscored upon and unbeaten, so it's really cool, and the field's named after him. And my dad was in coaching, so I felt like the step over to coaching was a lot easier than I expected, to be honest, and it really does help to have the mentors that I had, especially at Iowa with Coach Bell, my defensive line coach, Coach Wallace, Coach Neiman, Coach Parker, Coach Ferentz really helped me out too.
Even as a player, Evans displayed qualities of a future coach. Now that he is one, Evans believes it's where he's meant to be. I asked Evans what advice he got from his former head coach Kirk Ferentz, and he said it was just to be yourself and help the young guys in any way you can. Reporting live from Drake Stadium, Reina Garcia, Local 5 Sports.
Today, public educators are calling for changes in honor of International Workers' Day today, also known as May Day. Larissa, you went to a May Day rally here in the Metro. What conversations took place there?
Well, Stephanie, the rally held in Des Moines today was part of a bigger initiative happening nationwide. The Iowa State Education Association provided a chance for educators and advocates to speak about the issues regarding unions and the state's public school system. Here's what they had to say.
Power! Union! Power! Union! Power! Union!
The lawn of Goodrell Middle School was packed with educators, union advocates, and community members as they demand better circumstances for Iowa's public education system and teachers' unions.
In this state, teachers have always led the way when it comes to collective bargaining and unionization.
Superintendent of Des Moines Public Schools, Dr. Ian Roberts, took to the podium to say he believes now more than ever the state is seeing a direct attack on public education and a thriving democracy.
We will not kowtow. We're not going to lay down. We're going to keep standing and fighting strong, because we know that if we allow our system to be eroded, we're not going to have a thriving Des Moines, a thriving Central Iowa, or a thriving state of Iowa.
A local educator spoke of the effects of legislation passed last session altering area education agency funds and positions, saying she fears for the future of access to resources for Iowa's most vulnerable students.
Some areas of Iowa, I worry that our students will go without services because nothing might be available in our rural areas.
A DMPS bilingual family liaison spoke on the recent changes to immigration policies and the impacts they have on Latino students in Central Iowa, saying ICE raids and deportation are a fear among even the documented students, sending this message to them and their families.
We see them, we validate them, that we will be here to support them and to help them succeed, whether or not ICE is in our community knocking on our doors.
Larissa Leone, Local 5 News.
The West Des Moines Community School District is proposing a pay raise for its long-term substitutes to bring certified teachers back into the classroom and make sure your child is still getting the best education possible.
And Local 5's Megan McPherson is live outside of Valley High School this morning. She spoke with school officials about the next steps for this proposal. Good morning, Megan.
Yeah, Dana and Joseph, good morning. This proposal isn't necessarily about a general lack of subs. It's more so a lack of qualified teachers with the proper licenses and experience filling those long-term substitute roles. Now, currently in the state of Iowa, anyone with a sub authorization is eligible to fill in for a teacher in their classroom. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have the qualifications or experience with that specific grade or age group. Now, the West Des Moines Community School District has actually found that 71% of those who have taken long-term sub positions this year were not actually endorsed to teach that subject or grade. West Des Moines already offers one of the highest daily rates in the metro, but hopes that raising pay, again, will get the most qualified long-term teachers in front of students.
So we hope this brings in, like I said, our retired folks or other people who have teaching licenses to fill in those positions for our kids. We think they're the most qualified, and that's what we're looking for.
Now, the district is proposing a 3-tiered system with increased pay for certified teachers and specific endorsements. So, Tier 3, anyone with a sub-authorization will be paid $200 a day for long-term positions. That's staying the same. Now, what's new is if you have a teaching license but no endorsement for the subject, the daily rate bumps up to $250 a day, and then those with a license and endorsement will be paid $275 a day. Now, keep in mind, this is for for long-term positions only, and regular sub pay will stay the same. And the estimated cost of these increases will total about $55,000 for the district, which will be pulled from their general fund. That's used to pay for substitute salaries, not necessarily for those in ELA or special education positions, but just those in those regular subbing positions. Now, the board will take this up at its next meeting on May 12th, and if approved, these changes could be in effect as soon as next school year. We're live in West Des Moines this morning. Megan McPherson, Local 5 News.